One and bingo. So, hello everyone. I am absolutely delighted, if not elated, to have a very special guest with me today. A person whom I've known for quite some time now, and life has decided to put us in each other's ways in a very, very random way, if I may put it. But I'm very grateful. Perhaps it's by far one of the best experiences I've ever had, just by knowing who this person is and specifically how this person grew throughout the years. That's what really took my attention. It's a complete different level of dedication, grit, as I like calling it, and most importantly, resilience. But before all of that, and before hopping into the nitty gritty details and knowing the secret sauce so we can copy him, right? Let me just give you a quick overview of who this person actually is. So today on AE Talks, we're joined by someone whose journey is rooted in curiosity, creativity, and the courage to show up every day. Like this person shows us how much he runs every single day, literally, no strings attached, on social media, and he doesn't skip a single day. We need to know those thoughts, please. Another one is he comes all the way from Nigeria and happens to be a full time content creator. Known online as Captain Awesome. I love the name. And if you ever watch his content, you know he lives by one message: keep creating. He's closing in on 40 whopping thousand subscribers on his quite famous channel, Geekception, and a growing community across Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, you name it. To me, and genuinely, I would say this: he's proof that curiosity can lead to impact. So, without any further ado, let's dive into the mind behind the creativity we're seeing today. Captain Awesome, I am absolutely delighted to have you on board. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing really well. It is a pleasure to be here. I've, been watching a couple of the episodes. I think I watched the one with the previous guy talking about, AI and how you're able to use it hand in hand and not develop like a codependency. So I've,
Mhm.
definitely been looking forward to being here. So doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, absolutely phenomenal. But see, the beauty behind, I believe, this conversation or what we're going to unravel today is that you're a walking example to a lot of the youth today who might think they had it rough, who
Yeah.
might think that reaching somewhere worth reaching is not so hard, or who might think, hey, or at least that's how I was raised to think. If someone did it, then you can as well.
Mhm,
They're no superhuman. But
mhm,
what makes them superhuman and what makes people like Captain Awesome is a couple of different characteristics that can be taught. And that's the beautiful part. But only with some perseverance, practicality, and purpose in mind, I guess you can do that, if not even unlock different growth frontiers that he may have probably not unlocked. I personally come up from the background that every person has their own blueprint. And if they can just unlock knowing who they are and what they're born to pursue, I guess they have done themselves a huge, if not humongous favor. So I'm going to leave it to the expert. I'm going to leave it to the person who built it block by block. I want to know, why content creation?
I would say content creation definitely is not the point, and I think is what blows the minds of many people when I talk to them, right? Like, I don't create content because I want to create content, right? I create content as a side effect of everything else that I do, right? So I found that even when I started my blog in 2007 in Nigeria, was when I started my tech blog. And I did not start my blog because I wanted to be a blogger, right? I started my blog because people will just not stop talking to me about, hey, how do I do this? How do I configure this phone? How do I download this wallpaper? How do I do this? How do I download, like, network settings? So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to create a free blog on blogger.com, just go read it there and leave me alone, right? Because I just wanted to focus on just doing the thing I love, which is just mostly faffing about on the internet. Because I remember the early days of the internet, and I would like to say that it was back then, but even literally right behind it before this call, I actually was vibe coding a interface for myself to be able to edit my videos, but use AI as a sub editor. Because one thing like many people don't have, especially when you make content yourself, is you don't have an editor, right? You're mostly the person who is, conceptualizing it, who is shooting it, who is editing it, who is posting it. So there is no point in that process where you actually have someone who is telling you that pause. Should you be putting this there? Should you be putting it like this? Is this the best way to present this idea? We mostly don't have that. So one thing I've been doing, I've done it in several forms, and I think it's one thing I'll come back to eventually is that, today I even just I think I spent 6 hours because I track my time. I spent 6 hours today just vibe coding an app to be able to allow me to do that. So eventually, if I did make a video talking about this, to many people it will be like, oh, he made a content about how to make this kind of an app, but actually it's the opposite. I made this kind of app and the content is actually a side effect of the app that I made. You get it? So I think for me that's been
Wow.
the story of my content creation journey, is that most of the time is just me getting so deep into a rabbit hole of a kind of thing that I'm obsessed with at the moment, and I kind of, in programming or in development, app development, there's something known as full stack, which is being able to do the front end, which is the user interface you use on your phone or on your laptop, or the back end, which is sort of the databases and all of that back end stuff, right? So for me, I've sort of been obsessed with being like a full stack developer, which is being able to do both the front end and the back end. And when it comes to content as well, is the same. So I've obsessed over cameras, so I got good at cameras, right? I've obsessed over lighting, so I got good at lighting. There's like two lights here right now, right? I got obsessed with the cinematography aspect, so I became good at that, right? So it's a very full stack, and when I make my content, it's not because I actually want to make the content. It's literally because I'm like, there is nothing else I could do at that stage. I've already done everything I wanted to do, so I'm like, okay, I'll just tell people about it. So I think most of my content is mostly just from a place where I've done this thing and then I just want to tell you about it. And I think when I look back upon the journey so far, right, since 2006, 2007, when I was in just a high school, when I just freshly got into high school, I think what has kept me going most definitely is because, like, even when I'm not, making content in quotes for those who are listening in audio, right, is that end quotes, I'm still just doing stuff, right? So I took a break. There was a time I took a break for about 3 years where I wasn't making like any content. I wasn't publishing anything, but I had a notebook. I was writing my ideas, and it was over 500 pages long of just like ideas after ideas after ideas, because it never stops, right? And I think that's the first thing I will be leaning into today, which is when it comes to doing something, it's very important to find out what are the things that you naturally are attracted to, because I can most definitely tell you that if you're in it for money, money will come, money will go. If you're in it for fame, fame will come, fame will go. The algorithm will change, the things people want will change. So it really has to be something very intrinsic. It now becomes very paramount to find out, what do I care about? What is that one
Wow.
thing that I can do that nobody else can do? And it's a very hard thing, or it's a very hard question to make peace with initially, because most of the time we are conformed into, whether it's school, whether it's religion, whether it's our culture, where we have this conformity where you have to, fall in with the pack. You have to do what everyone is doing. Don't be a problem child. Don't be disobedient. Don't be any of that. But I found you often need a sprinkle of that. For some people, maybe a little bit more, to be able to truly discover what is the thing that you really like, and then you just off to the races.
Wow. I like how profound this is because not only that you spoke about content creation is a byproduct of what you initially planned to do. This is what you believe you do or you're attracted to genuinely and effortlessly. And I want to focus on the word effortlessly here because I believe it resonates big time with what you said very nicely is look at things that you're attracted to naturally.
Yeah.
And then you just moved on and you kept saying how if you're in it for the fame, it comes and goes. And to me, that is absolutely flabbergasting. And if you're in it for the money, oof, tell me about it. Money comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
And I just really like how you personally changed my personal perspective just by the beginning of it. How attracted are you to the thing that you're trying to do? Or are you fooling yourself into it because you feel that you're attracted to it, but in hindsight, it's actually because of fame or because of money or because of
Yeah.
God knows what? That to me is great. Wow. I mean, if I were to end the episode here, I believe the job is already well done.
No, that's not what they came
But
for. That's not what they came for. We gotta give the people what they want. But
right.
I think it's again it's really really funny because I've also gone through that cycle, right? I've gone through many cycles in life, right? And the thing I keep coming back to every single time is I keep coming back to where I go on a journey of 1,000 miles, right? And then you go on this journey, you're like, I'm going to go on this journey, the adventure calls, I'm going to climb the seven seas and I'm going to perhaps, swim the seven seas rather and climb the seven mountains and you conquer every challenge that comes your way and you get to the final destination and it's exactly the same place you started from. So you look around you and you're confused. You're like, what? Like I thought I traveled far, but how come I'm exactly where I started from? And it can be confusing in the sense that to many people, they are crestfallen, right? They lose hope. They're like, this has all been for nothing. This is where people get the fame, for example, or people get the money. Then realize that wait a minute, like I'm still the same person. Like, sure, I have multiples of zeros in my bank account, but life has not inherently changed in that, you still have the same 24 hours. You can still use only one phone at a time. You can still sleep in only one bed at a time. You can still drive only one car at a time, even if you have 50. So it then becomes about shit. Like, what is the deeper meaning behind any of this, right? And which is why I say, you go all of that way and you come back to the same point, which is the same thing you feel when you had nothing and when you were hungry or when you had no multiples of zeros. Maybe you have only 1 zero in your bank account. So I think the lesson I've learned through all of these cycles, and I keep relearning, because for some reason my brain keeps forgetting, and I think it's the same, it's the same thing for us humans as well, is that I think when they say that it's not about the destination, right? It's about the journey. Many people understand it on a very superficial way. Like, yeah, sure, yeah, of course, we all know it's about the journey. You have to enjoy the journey, right? But
Correct.
we don't really believe it. Like, we don't really, have it as a lived experience. So we kind of have to go on that journey, right? Which is why we go on the journey. Which is why we climb the mountains and you conquer everything, only to come back to the point where you realize that there is not a lot of things that is actually super important anyway. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's being comfortable enough so you have some money in the bank, maybe it's having fulfillment in your career, whatever it is you choose. Maybe it's having time off whenever, whatever that means to you. And it's not much more than that, right? Health, right? Of course, we cannot forget good health, right? Having good health and every other thing, it's very negotiable, right? It's not do or die. You realize at the end of the day, right? But
Mm,
for some people, it takes, being 65 or 70 or 50 or 40 or, the fire movement, right? Like who the people who want to, make all the money quickly when they're young and then at 35 or 40, they retire and they don't have to work again in their life. It doesn't matter what stage you accomplish that. I think most people still come to the same realization that okay, so what am I supposed to do now? And I think for me, one thing that has always stuck in my mind, and I remember the first time I could formulate thoughts, cogent thoughts like I'm speaking to you right now, was when I was like 11 years old. And I remember looking around me and thinking to myself, first of all, it seemed I was born in the wrong country because I couldn't relate to anybody around me. So that was really difficult. Second of all was that I really couldn't connect to most people around me because I think the incentive structure in Nigeria, where I'm from, is very short term based, right? So many people are looking for, okay, what can you give me right now? Okay, what can you do for me right now? Okay, if you're not giving me anything right now, if I'm not seeing the result of anything, if money is not entering into my pocket, then you're saying nonsense. Like, stop talking to me, right? So coming up in a culture like that, it's very difficult to tell people like, yeah, you have to just, do things slowly for a very long time. And even then, you don't know if anything is going to come out of it because the
Right.
point for anything to come out of it, the point is to do it. And if anything comes out of it, that's okay. If anything also doesn't come out of it, that's okay. But that was very difficult to tell people, especially as an 11-year-old. So I learned to just and I think it's a principle I still follow till today, which is to show and not tell, right? And I think it's something in storytelling as well, right? So if you watch a movie and you think this movie is quite a bad movie, right? If you dig very deep into it, it's because there's a lot of most likely exposition, right? The movie starts and someone is like, "Yeah, when I was 5 years old, my dad was I left my mom, and because of that, my cat fell on a chair." You kind of feel like, wait a minute, why is this movie telling me all of this? Like, you can just show me, right? And I think the same thing is how life is, right? In life, I found very early that I really couldn't tell people what I wanted. I had to show them what I wanted, right? So that meant that for my mom, for example, I grew up with my mom. My mom is a doctor. Of course, she wants me to be a doctor, and everybody wants me to be a doctor in the village I grew up in. I literally grew up in a village, and then I realized that wait a minute, I don't want to be a doctor, right? I want to do something else. Okay, what do you want to do? I have no idea. But you don't want to be a doctor. Yes, but a doctor is a good thing. You know that, right? Yeah, I know that. But so if it's a good thing, don't you want a good thing? Sure, I want a good thing, so be a doctor, right? So that conversation was very circular, right? And it was very difficult in trying to tell anybody at that stage because I didn't have any proof of work, right? There was nothing I had not done anything personally, so there was nothing I could tell anybody. So I think for me, it then became about doing things and seeing where they lead, right? But not from a point where I'm married to the results, right? So it meant that I just started doing any and everything I could do, right? So, or someone had a phone they wanted configured, I would look into it. Oh, there's a cyber cafe nearby, I would blow all my money on going to cyber cafes, right? There was this latest new technology, whatever, I would go and buy the books because at that time you had to buy books, right? You couldn't we
Right.
didn't have internet, so I had to read it off of books, right? I had to buy the books. My mom couldn't afford like the super powerful computers or whatever, so I would nag her for like 4 years before she would eventually build me like a really bad PC, but it was good enough. And then I would be on Encarta Encyclopedia and I would print out the pages because there was no electricity in Nigeria. So I would print out pages of Encarta Encyclopedia and just read that, right? I would read how, planes work, how cars were built, because one of my dreams has always been to build like a car, right? So at that time, I would print out all of these things. I still have that book till now from like when I was like 13, 14 years old, right? So
Wow.
I'll do all of this. And then eventually I realized that, okay, I could do things and I just kept doing things. And eventually I would discover the internet. The internet was like, it's like candy. It's like, you mean there's unlimited free candy and you can just take it anytime? And for me, that was the internet, right? Because it was a place of possibility. And I think when people talk about AI now, it's very similar to how people talked about the internet then
The
in Nigeria.
internet back then.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Everybody was so skeptical. They're going to steal your data. They're going to steal your face. Just get off it. You don't know what you're doing. And I think for me back then, growing up, I was like, but there's a lot of possibilities. What are you talking? What are you telling me about? Like, how can you see a bountiful harvest and then say I should starve? Like it's
Mhm.
at this stage, it's illogical for me to starve when there's literally every food for every pallet for every person available, right? So I would dive deeper into it, and like I told you, like I just kept doing things until someone told me like, hey, can you do this for me? So I'll do it for them. Can you do this for me? So it got too much until I created my blog. Before you know it, that kind of escalated a little bit. But before that, I was learning to be a programmer. So I actually started off as a programmer, not as a blogger, right? So I started off as a programmer. I used to code in Java back then. I used to code in Java and I would keep doing all of this, programming. And then I would go to events. Of course, my mom did not want me to go to events because I was like 15 years old at the time. I lived in the village, very remote, about 7, 8 hours by bus. So of course, she didn't want me to like travel to go to the city to go for an event, so I had to convince her like, no, no, actually I could go and, I would wear her down. Eventually I would go to the event. I would meet people. I would meet like minds, and I think it's very important, which is why I love this, like your channel so much and what you're doing, right? Because it really does show people what is possible. Because for me, I can remember back then very clearly that it really helped just seeing people, seeing a Nigerian guy who was at
Mhm.
Microsoft in 2008, right? Seeing a Nigerian guy who was at Nokia back then, if you remember, not if anybody remembers
Yeah.
Nokia, at Alcatel, at Siemens back then, right? So all these Nigerians who studied in Nigeria, it's not like I said they were Nigerian American or anything. They were Nigerians who even went to university in Nigeria, but then they went outside, they got jobs at these big companies, and now they're coming back to Nigeria to like foster their local development technology scene. So it was very inspiring to see all of that, and it confirmed to me that this was possible, right? But I would travel back 7 hours to like my village, and everybody was still like 50 years behind, right? So it didn't matter what I did outside. When I came back home, it was still the same thing. And I think that's where it then became about, even more importantly, about just doing more. And at that stage, there's a tendency to, fold to the pressure, because there was pressure, right? My mom wanted me to go to university, but I decided not to go to university because I was like, hey, I have this technology thing I want to do. But she was like, no, you can't do that. You have to go to uni. So in Nigeria back then, I think even till now, university exams are only once a year. So if you miss that window, you have to wait till the next year to write that exam. So I would 3 years in a row attend the exams and not write anything, right? Go to the exams, not write anything. So technically, I failed in quotes, end quotes, and I would have 1 year. So what am I going to do in 1 year, right? At least that's what my mom thought. But for me, I was like, yeah, I told her like I don't want to go to school, but she was like, no, you have to go to school. So I was like, okay, if she's not going to listen to me, is she going to tell the education authority that they made a mistake? No, right? So for me, these were some of the ways where I played with sort of within or maybe a little bit outside the rules, because of just, again, I had no idea where things were going to go at this stage. And if you ask me at that stage, like, what's your 5 year plan? What's your future vision? What's your vision board? None of that. I still don't, actually. I've never had one. But for me, it was just like I just knew I was very driven towards like this thing that I had to do, right? And I think, thinking coming to the longer term, one thing that I've always I don't know what age exactly, but one thing I've always viewed the world as is in 3 quarters, right? So 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, right? So 0 to 30, and I was what, 18 years old. So I felt, hey, before 30 years old, I still have a lot of time. So I can afford to burn 5 years technically, and I'll still be good. Because even at 18, if I burned 5 years, I would probably be 24, 25. I can still do stuff at 24, 25. Okay. So then I have 30 to 60 and then 60 to 90, right? So because of that, by the time I eventually got into uni, so I did eventually get into uni for those who are watching, right? By the time I eventually got into uni, I was 21, I believe, at that stage. No, I was 19 at that stage, right? So I was 19. So from 16 to 19, I refused to go to uni. But most of my friends, and I didn't say earlier, but I had failed one of my classes, one of my levels in high school. So I had to repeat a class. So because of that, I was 1 year behind all of my friends who we started together. So by the time I got into uni, most of my friends had already done their 4 year degree and they already started working, right? So my mom was telling me, all your friends have finished uni, all your friends, those that are starting to become doctors, they're halfway through their whatever medical school right now. So all of that pressure was piling up, right? And my mom is a single mom, so she also had that factor, like, people are gonna say that I didn't raise you right, and they're gonna say this is why single parenthood is bad. It reflects bad on me. So all of these factors. But for me, it was just like, if that's not what I want, then I don't think I'm going to do that, right? So I got into uni, you know, got my accommodation and everything. I went to school, registered in my college. I got into computer science, right? I went to my first class. It was like about 1,000 people because it was public university. I went to the first class. I saw, no, even before I went to the first class, I think the briefing, right? Like this freshman introduction. I saw the curriculum for like the 4 years, and I was like, man, no way, man, no way. Because the programming languages they had there was about 30 years behind. The curriculum was like so outdated already at 2008 2009. But I was like, I'm going to give it a chance, right? So I went to my first class, and after sitting down in my first class and sitting through a lecture with 1,000 people, looking through everything, I never went back. Right? I had paid for my hostel and everything. I had paid for everything, school, 1 year rent, everything. I packed my bags. I traveled to the city, and I never went back to college, right? I just kept doing what I was doing. And I think for me, again, at this stage, there was no thinking, overthinking or anything. It was just very simple that this is not what I want, then I shouldn't be here. Because why am I here? This is not what I want, right? And of course, the alarm bells are ringing. Everybody's telling you. Even my housemate is telling me, like, dude, listen, you already paid for the house. Come on, at least see, maybe it's gonna get better in 1 month. Maybe it's gonna get better in 1 year, right? Well, I was like, listen, if I don't view it right now that it's something I want to do, I'm not going to do it. I mean, now that I'm a lot more, intellectual, I can say I have more intellectual ways to put it. Is that I choose my pain, and I think I will not suffer in a situation that is not one where I'm okay suffering at, right? So, and I think for many people, I think they it's again, it's very difficult, and I'm not very typical, right? Because by the time I would do that, I would get a job. Of course, my mom did not know this. I would get my radio show, so I had a radio show as well because I'd been in the
Wow.
industry at this stage for like 4 years. So I had a radio show where I talked about technology. My first episode was when Facebook acquired Instagram. That was my first episode, right? $1 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first episode on radio. So I'll do all of these things. And my mom was like, yeah, I'm happy with you, but how about school? How about your college? So she would see how my mood would change every time she talked about school. So eventually, I think in the second year that I was in school, in codes, she would pull me aside and say, listen, every time I talk to you about school, you would, you clam up, you just, what is going on? Talk to me. So I'll tell her, like, listen, I think that it's not for me. I really don't think it's for me because I see what people are willing to do, how people are willing to suffer. And I'm like, I'm not risk averse. I'm not suffering averse. I'm not someone who would say that, oh, I want to not feel any pain in my life. No, I don't believe that at all. But that's not the kind of suffering I'm going to take, right? So she's like, okay, okay, all right. What do you want to do? I'm like, well, if you ask me what I want to do right now, I don't want to go to uni because I think I already have a good thing going on. I had my radio show. I think at that stage, 2009, 2010, about 5 remote jobs at that time where I was writing for people in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. So I was like, I'm good. I had my AdSense at that stage. So I was earning money from my blog as well, from Google. So I was like, I'm good. She's like, yeah, but you are my son. You must go to university.
I like how you put it in the Nigerian accent.
No, you have to. This one, you have to. So I was like, well, just as a very crazy idea, I was like, well, if you want to send me to uni, I don't think a university in Nigeria matches the standard of what I want. So if you want to send me to university, you are going to have to send me abroad. Okay, a bit of context at that stage. My mom could not afford to send me abroad. So I was basically just telling her, like, listen, you can't send me abroad, so leave me alone. Let me go do whatever I want to do, right? She's like, okay. And I was like, what do you mean, okay? She's like, all right, go do your research. Tell me which university you want to go, and we will see. I was like, all right then. So I
Wow.
search. I know. So I did my search. I spoke to a few people, a couple of my friends who had a friend here, but I remember like 5, 7 years before I had a Microsoft Xbox, and of course, as a tech guy, well, not initially, I was just a bad child because I would spoil all the piece of technology we had because I'll take it apart and not be able to put it back together. But I had the Microsoft Xbox, and underneath it said made in Malaysia there. So Malaysia kind of stuck in my mind. And when my mom would then tell me, like, listen, okay, so which country would you like to go? Flashback in that moment, I flashed back to that Malaysia moment underneath the Xbox. So I said Malaysia, right? She's like, all right, so go find out about Malaysia. So I spoke to one of my friends who had a friend who was here, who had also lived near us. So I spoke to him. He told me about Malaysia. I had a couple of friends in the tech scene as well who told me about someone here who was in Malaysia. I'll speak to them. I'll do my research. I would apply online. I'll pay for the application fee to help university. And 2 years later, because it will take 2 years because they denied my visa the first time and all that because from Nigeria. But 2 years later, I made it here. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I finished that first 0 to 30 years here in Malaysia. And I'm now, in that 30 to 60 years, that second quadrant. And what I would say is that it's about the long game, right? And I think many things that I was telling people and screaming at the top of my lungs in 2007, 2008, many of those things happened at the time. By the time people started messaging me about it in 2017, it was too late, right? Because I was like, listen, I was screaming at the top of my voice like 10 years ago or 15 years ago for you to, learn how to use this, learn how to, add this to your workflow, learn how, but people were like, nah, it doesn't concern me, so I'm not going to do it. And I think it's one of the things that even right now, right? Like I run every day and there's several things I do every day, right? My brain is sort of wired for streaks. So I have several streaks every day. And it's my running. This is day 339 right now that I've run every day in 2025. It's my work. So every day I have a minimum of 1 hour of working, at least 1 hour every day, right? So I'm on an 88-day streak right now. With my wife, we have an app called Paired, where every single day you get questions, both of you, like so 3 questions, and they're interactive. So some of them are, you type, you answer a question. Some of them you swipe left and swipe right, which one applies to you or your partner or both. The other one is usually like, oh, how is this person like this? So you answer about your partner, right? So that app is being revolutionary because it keeps me and my wife connected every single day, and we are on right now a 150-day streak, right, of answering every day.
Wow. What's the application called again?
Paired, Paired. Yes, paired.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
check that out.
Yeah, right. So I'm on a lot of streaks like this, right? And these are just the ones I remember, right? So I think for me, one of the reasons I love streaks are that they are the long way around, right? So what that means is when people hear me talking to you right now, right? Or when people watch your podcast, or when people see anybody who is doing anything that is outward facing, right? It always looks like it's instant, right? Because maybe they discover you at this moment. So, they binge through most of the things you've done, right? They watch this episode, the previous episode, and they check out your profile, they check out your talks, they check out your book. If you have a book, they check out this, they check out. So it's like to them, time is compressed into that one moment where they discover you, right? And it warps reality where people think, oh wow, this guy he just got here. Because you literally just did to them, right? But from yourself outward, right? So from inside out, right? It's actually the reverse, right? It's like you're doing tiny things every day, and most days don't feel revolutionary, right? Most days they don't feel like you're pushing the needle. In fact, some days are even more frustrating than others, right? But then you get out there, or sometimes it just clicks, or sometimes over time things just, you just look back and you're like, whoa, I've actually done 339 days of running every day, right? It's like it's compound
Mm.
interest in a way that is really slow, but also at the same time is really fast, right? And I think because the way my mind has always worked, I've always been able to see this compression of time simultaneously, right? Like in the moment, I can kind of tell, when you're playing a video game, but you don't have to play a video game to be able to understand this, where there's a dialogue option, right? Did this person talk bad about me, right? Yes or no? And then you're like, your character is like, oh, should you choose yes and you'll be honest with the other character, or do you choose no and you protect their feelings, but then you lie to them, right? So then you say yes, you lie to them, or you say no, sorry, rather you lie to the other character, right? And then it tells you there like, oh, this is a bad choice, right? And you can see that, oh, I made a bad decision, right? And I think for me, I have that, except in real life, where I can kind of see where, there's that meme of a guy holding a tiny domino, and then, you push that domino and all the other domino fall
The
around it.
effect goes on. Yeah.
For me, I have this kind of a mind that I've always been able to see the dominoes, right? Which is that, okay, let's say I want to be 70 years old, right? And I want to say at 70 that I've lived a life that I'm happy with, right? So that means that if I work my way back with the dominoes that preceded, it means that at 70, if I have tons of health problems, which inevitably I will have one or two or maybe more, depending on my genetics and all that, right? The ones I cannot prevent, right? But for the ones that I can prevent, if I prevent them, then by 70, I will just have a nice quality of life. I'll probably just be working through my archives because even at 34, I have so many archives already. But I'll probably just be trying to categorize and put all the proper metadata for my data, I think, before just right before I croak. But, I'm going to be of sound mind, right? So it's like, okay, if I'm going to be of sound mind at that stage, then I also need not just a great body, I need a great mind, I need great people around me. I need to be doing something fulfilling. I need to have protected my financial health, for example, so that by the time I'm there, I'm not worrying about, oh, can I afford to change my catheter this month, right? I'm not going to be worrying about that, right? So it's like when those dominoes are there, then it just becomes about the very, very slow process of just doing a very tiny bit every day. And I think this is the part that is the hardest, right? Even for me, right? The part that is the hardest. And I think when things go wrong, many people, or maybe the way we are conditioned, is to blame external forces, right? Oh, the conditions were not right for me, or there was racism, or there is all of these things. And again, this is not me saying that those things do not exist, because they also exist for me as well. But I think more importantly than that, I'm always calibrated to always ask questions of myself instead, right? Because again, most of the time it's not about the cards that you were dealt, right? It's about how you play those cards. And sometimes even it's about not playing cards at all, right? It's realizing that, oh wait, I'm in a losing game, so I'm just gonna stop playing, right? Maybe it's because some games the best way to play is not to play, right? Maybe some games the best way to play is to play
Mhm.
hard, right? So it then becomes about sort of tuning your own taste to be able to find out what is required in whatever specific situation you are, and then just doing a little bit of it. And again, like I told you, over the long term, that 3 quarters I'm looking at, things add up. They really add up. So when we were in college, which is where we met, this was already part of like my 0 to 30 year plan, right? Where I was just doing things, right? And it's like at that moment it didn't make sense because I was the most brokest I've ever been, I was the most hungriest I've ever been, I was the most loneliest alone that I've ever been. But the plan still remained the same, which was again just to follow my curiosity. And even right now, where I'm at the most not brokest, definitely I'm at the most richest I've ever been, I'm at the most loved I've ever been, and I'm at the most, physically great shape I've ever been. I think it still remains the same, right? And it's still the same questions I ask myself when I want to take on a project, when I want to make a video, when I want to run, which is, how do I do this, and am I doing the things that I really want to do, right? So, where provided you're doing the things you really want to do, I found it doesn't require you to put as much effort. And I think, I've spoken to so many people about this, and they're like, wait, if you're doing the things you want to be doing, then does that not mean you should be doing the most because you know what you want to be doing? And I think it's like, no, because if you know that you have 1 million in your bank account, uh, you are not going to say that, oh my god, if I don't have 1 more cent, I'm gonna chill, bro, you're good. You know what I mean? Like you have the capital, you can relax, right? And the relaxation is not out of laziness, the relaxation is out of abundance, right? So every day I am not putting in as much as I should be, in quotes and quotes, right? Because I don't need to. Because I know that provided I'm just moving in the direction of where I want to go, just add 10 years, my man. Just add 20 years and it will happen. In fact, it has already happened, right? Because all I'm just doing now is I'm fulfilling a destiny that has already been set, right? All I'm just doing is just becoming that person already, because I already am that person, right? I'm just, taking the daily steps of waking up every day like a video game, of just like, 24 hours you wake up, okay, and then the next 24 hours you wake up, and then the sun rises and set, and then that's all I'm doing, right? Because it's already been set, right? So which is why I was,
Emmanuel, I really, really, really want to make sure that the audience members take so much from what you're saying because it truly is quite valuable. I mean, I
yeah,
personally am learning a lot.
yeah,
And to add on top of that, a lot of the youth today, a lot of the generations coming up, they would hear you out and they could see the energy through your eyes. They could see the spark through your mouth. They could see it. And you're living God knows how many thousands of miles away from them just from a video.
Yeah.
That energy is contagious. But I want to make sure that this doesn't turn into a YouTube video where you should wake up at 5 a.m. and you should go to red light therapy and you should do blah, blah, blah. And but all the billionaires do what have you. You're a person who came from very humble beginnings. And
Yeah.
it's something that is quite astounding that a person like you, from a very young age, having that level of maturity, which is a very, very big question mark. Like, are you gifted? Because I do not expect a lot of kids to think in 3 quarters like you did as you're 30, 30, 60. I mean, like if my kid were to think that way, I did my job as a father. I did my job as a father. You know, I'm lucky. I'm the luckiest man alive. But
Yeah.
back again to it, one very pressing question that I always get, specifically from people younger than us who are about to explore life and unlock and unravel and unpack whatever it is that you want to do. How do you keep the spark when motivation is low? How do you keep going?
Well, I would say that in many ways it is to unlearn having to keep going. So it's very counterintuitive, right? So it's like, how do you keep breathing, right? Or how do you keep walking? Or how do you keep blinking, right? You don't, right? You just blink. You just walk. If you have legs, or you just blink, right? And I think it's one of the biggest unlocks that even for me, I've had to learn, right? Because eventually you get to a stage where you think, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And all these external things come into your head. And I think one of the biggest lessons, if you're going to pick anything up from this video, is learning to know that, again, you don't have to find anything because what you are looking for, you already have it, right? And it's going to be confusing. I believe me, it was for me as well, right? What that means essentially in very simple terms is that provided you're just doing and moving and it's really slow, right? Even I feel frustrated sometimes at just how slow it is, right? Because I know that I've said all of this, and even sometimes I feel frustrated, like, man, this could move a lot more faster, right? Like I make videos sometimes, like I think January of this year, I did a campaign with Samsung, and that video took me 2 months to make, like 2 months, right? It took a month to plan the whole shoot, right? It was for the watch. I was shooting every single day for 7 days, playing a different sport every day for 7 days and recording that. So which means we have to like do production and pre-production for 7 different locations and plan the timings and book everything and shoot everything. And it's raining here in Malaysia. So it was raining some days, swap the days, swap the videographer. It took a month to shoot, right? And it took another month to edit. And throughout that process, I kept telling myself, man, why is it taking so long? Why is this, other people make videos and it doesn't take this long, right? Other people do this stuff. Like, why did I have to send this script for seven? You know, I'm questioning myself about all of these things, right? And I think even I had to learn that lesson in that moment after the video came out and, it had no comments from the clients. The client immediately was like, this is good to go. We really love it. Because of that job, I've gotten about 3 more jobs from Samsung this year because they really liked that video. And it's like, again, I had to learn, like, I could not rush the thing that I already had, right? And why am I rushing, right? I'm rushing because I think that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I think I'm comparing myself to other people and looking at other people how they do stuff, and I'm telling myself that way I should be. Again, none of that matters, right? Because at the end of the day, you are not other people. You're yourself. And that thing that makes you you, it's not going to look like anybody else. So when on the days that motivation are low, in quotes, I think what has really helped is, more importantly than trying to find it back, it's in fact is in just learning to be in the moment. Right. So let's say, for example, I'm a writer, right? I write, I love writing, right? And this is my passion. This is my life. I've managed to turn my passion into what makes me money, right? But then, as writers know, or people who are writers know, you cannot write every day. You cannot write every day. You cannot write good things every day. In fact, most things you write will be bad. Most projects you start will start from a very, very shitty place before it gets better. So most times often than not, it is more shitty than it is not, right? So maybe the audience, they get the packaged product, right? The final thing, the one that has all the polish and everything, right? But you have got to experience every stage of that, and you experience more shitty stages than not, right? Meanwhile, the audience, for example, for them, they just, oh wow, the video is great. Captain, oh, I loved your Insta story. Oh, I loved your run the other day. Oh, I loved it. They only see the end product. So I think it becomes even more important to just not punish yourself when you think you are lacking motivation. And in fact, I've learned that it helps to just embrace the fact that that's not where you are at the moment. Like, okay, sure, you're a writer, and right now, maybe for the past 1 week, for example, you've not been able to write. So you've beat yourself up every single day. Will that make you even like a better writer? Would that make you write better? Like, okay, maybe it did eventually, and I think many people face this maybe when they are maybe at a middle or later in their career, where when you first start, you use that as fuel, which if you're younger now, you can relate to, where you have so much emotion, you use this as your fuel, like, use that bitter energy, that negative energy, to sort of spur yourself. But I can tell you for sure that that does not last very long. Like that, you lose the ability to do that when life gets serious. When things get very serious, many things demand your attention, your family, your finances. It becomes very difficult to use hate as a motivator, right? It's not a very good fuel, right? So it then becomes about unlearning the fact that you need to use or even punish yourself in the first place. And it's just embracing that, oh, you know what we're not doing today? We're not writing today. So if we're not writing today, what can we do today? Right. So it then, in a very roundabout way, it actually expands the horizons of what you can do. Right. So take me, for example, right? There was a month, I think September, my wife was sick the entire month. So I couldn't get in the groove of like making stuff, right? I couldn't make videos because she was very sick. And there was no time. I wanted to change my setup. I wanted to do so many things, follow up with clients, but I couldn't have like, 1 hour in a day where I could do stuff because she was coughing every 2 minutes. We timed it for the entire month. It was really bad. We
Wow.
went to the clinic like 7 times, right? So a month like that, like using your example of, how do you do things when motivation is low? My motivation was definitely low, right? Am I going to blame my wife for being sick? That's why I cannot work, right? Am I going to punish myself that, oh, yeah, she's sick, but you know what? You have to do anyway, and you do it no matter what. No, I'm not going to do that, right? Or, I mean, I could do that, but that would not help make me a better partner for my wife who is sick. It would not make me a better person to myself because the thoughts in my head would definitely not be great, right? So how do I make all of this stuff again that has the light in my eyes when the light literally is dead, right? Like it cannot work, right? So I think it
Mm.
then becomes important at that stage when you are very honest with yourself, like, okay, we're not doing this. So if we're not doing this, what can we do, right? So for me, maybe it was, oh, I have so many files on my computer anyway. I'd not, organized because I was making videos back to back to back. So I really couldn't move my files. I couldn't do my archives. So I'll do that instead, right? There were some ideas I never worked on because I had all this, projects I was doing that I didn't really have time. I had a weekly schedule. Okay, now that I'm a bit more free, okay, maybe I'll try taking a stab at it, right? I had been looking at all these AI things and how, I had been experimenting with a lot of AI, but it has mostly been in like the command center, no, no, the terminal. So like your terminal interface, basically, it's not really like an app you can click with your mouse and everything. So I kind of, okay, what if I make an app that I can, see the interface and I can click on things, and it's not just like some terminal thing I have to run commands, right? So I experimented with that, and all of those things, whether I knew it at the time or not, is what built a foundation for me that when I eventually started making videos again, the video I made again was I think end of October, was about 48 minutes, right? And that video single-handedly got me a deal with Lenovo, right? Just that one.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And when I made that video, I there was no expectation. It was just I had all these things in my head, and I was just like, again, like I said, the content creation is a side effect, right? But it can only be a side effect because I had other things going on, right? Because
So,
the moment,
Emmanuel, I love the example where you were saying your wife was sick, right? And you decided not to punish yourself, which is powerful
yeah,
because we would easily punish ourselves. Because, by the way, that could be the easiest route to feel like, because you got to feel something in you. So, I'm not going to punish myself. My wife needs my attention. Life happens.
yeah,
Now, you took the time to try to move along with things that, yeah, now what can I do? I cannot be the most creative as I think I should be, or I'm
Yeah.
not gonna have the amount of time that I could do blah 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 blah. So you decided to do your archiving, your organizing, your all the nine yards, right?
Yeah.
Here's what I love when you segued into, but only because of what happened, somehow, some way, you segued automatically into a month later or 2 months later, by the end of October, you were blessed by a video that was 48 minutes long, and you
Yeah.
single-handedly had that land you Lenovo as a
Yeah.
partner. Does that would you agree if I were to say sometimes setbacks are slingshots?
100%, because everything is a story element. Everything that happens to you is part of a chapter in a story that you're constantly writing. And provided the book is not closed, everything propels you forward. In fact, I argue that everything propels you forward, right? It's always about being able to be there to receive it. Which is why I told you that, you go all of this way and you still have to come back to the place where you started, which is just to surrender, right? Which is to realize that, yeah, as much as we like to control things, we like to, we will go to school, we find a partner, we find a good job, we find, good hobbies and all of these things. As much as we do all of those things, life always reminds us, right? Whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's the loss of a job, whether it's even, for some people it's depression, whether it's, mental health issues, life will remind you that you don't have as much control as you like to believe that you do, right? You just have a facade of it, right? You just have a false image, right? So I think rather than
I
have
am
life,
loving this conversation. I'm loving it.
so
Continue.
it's like, rather than have life remind you, maybe, when I say remind you, for me, it was, let's say, my wife being sick the whole month, right? And even October, she was pretty sick. That's why I could only do stuff at the end of October, right? So rather than have life remind you on like a big stage, right? The biggest stage of all, now all my work comes to a halt. Now I cannot do anything, right? So rather than that, I found that it really helps to embrace it, embrace the tiny opportunities that life gives you to just be present, right? So let's say I'm running every day, right? For many people, they're like, they set like, and I used to be one of those people, right? They set like a very superly high goal. I have to run 5 kilometers every day or it doesn't count. I have to run every day or it doesn't count. For me, it's very simple actually. It's 2 kilometers. I have to do at least minimum of 2 kilometers every day. And it doesn't matter if I crawl, right? Like literally, I might as well crawl on the ground, provided it says 2 kilometers, I accept it, it's done. So what that meant was that, let's say my wife is sick, right? I would just run at home, right? Literally, I would run around my tiny apartment here until it said 2 kilometers was done because I couldn't leave her, right? And that was it. It's done. 2 kilometers done, right? So that's why I said, like, for me personally, on a day to day, your standards have to be really low, which is counterintuitive, right? Because you want your standards to be high and all of that. But they're really low, not because you have low standards. They're really low so that you have enough bandwidth, right? Or for some people, it will be headspace to be able to actually tackle the most important problems you have. Because not all problems are equal and not all problems demand the same kind of effort. But when you're young or when you're from a background where everything holds the same kind of importance, it becomes very hard to actually be able to separate. Actually, this one, I can let it go. It's okay. I don't have to decide where I want to eat every single time, right? So if I'm very busy, my wife decides and I don't have any say in it. And even if it's not what I want, guess what? I don't have any say in it because I know that I have bigger problems that day. Maybe I'm working on a video. Maybe I'm working on a really hard thing, right? So I'm just going to dedicate all of my energy to that hard thing. And every other thing is it's low stakes, right? The language we use in our house is low stakes, right? So when I tell my wife low stakes, she's like, all right, I got you. But if it's high stakes, that means that, all right, I need to dedicate a lot of effort to this. So the things that are not as important, you kind of have to discover what those things are for yourself. And even for me, I run every day, and even running is not my high stakes, right? Which surprises a lot of people when I tell them, like, yeah, no, running is one of the things I don't think about. Like, it's one of the things that because in my head, I've told myself that if I'm at home and I cannot go out, I will just walk at home. and that's it. Like, it's like I don't have to think about it. Oh, it's raining. Oh, my shoe is not good. Oh, it's so hot. Oh, I woke up too late. Oh, I woke up too early. It doesn't matter. You know what is going to happen today? Before 12 midnight, I'm going to do 2 kilometers. However, it is I do those 2 kilometers. I'm creative. I find a way, right? I walk with a friend. I walk with my wife. I walk by myself. I run. I run fast. I run slow. I walk slow. I walk fast. It doesn't matter. What matters is just doing it, right? Same thing for working. Every day I put aside 1 hour to work every day. 1 hour sounds abysmally low, right? Like, how do you only want to work 1 hour every day? Like, how is that possible? But for many people, the hard thing of working is not the actual hours you work, right? It's actually just getting a chance to do it in the first place, right? Because I call it the sit when you sit on the couch and you're like, I'm just going to watch YouTube for 5 minutes, or it's going to play with my phone for 5 seconds, and then 2 hours have passed, right? So oftentimes the most hardest thing is just sitting down on your chair, right? So that's what that 1 hour gives me, right? So more times often than not, if I only have to do 1 hour, I find I end up doing a little bit more than 1 hour, right? Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's 1 hour and 0 seconds, right? Sometimes it's 7 hours. Like today was 7 hours, right? So it's like you just have to give yourself a chance, but you have to keep it low first. Because if it's too high, then you beat yourself up because you're like, wait, I didn't do 5 kilometers. So now I'm a failure. I didn't work for 7 hours today. So you cannot be doing that, especially when you are at a stage where, most importantly, you just need to do stuff and you just need to find the stuff you like and just do that.
Wow. I actually want to take everything that's been said, Emmanuel, and I really want to drizzle it down into one of, or at least one of the successes that I can see clearly. And I've lived through it through the years ever since I knew you, which is Geekception.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part behind Geekception is that I would usually go to one of your very old videos and look at one of your very recent videos and see hands-on development. But what I really want to see, and that's one of the main reasons I'm so happy you're here with me, is I want to walk the audience through the process. I want to have them understand, how long did you have this YouTube channel? I want you to tell me one day where you felt this is not for me. A day where probably your likes were down, your comments were too negative, probably sometimes toxic.
Yeah.
Your shooting wasn't the best. You didn't have the capabilities. Your setup wasn't the almighty setup that would make you or grant you deals with big companies. I know a lot has been going there. So from the very day you started to the day you are at today, I just want you to walk me through how your day goes. I also have another question. 40,000 subscribers. Do you still remember your first subscriber?
Well, from the beginning, I think up until now, if you're asking me about, like, my day, I would say it really differs, right? So when I first started, and I think this advice still holds true to anybody who wants to start anything, not just a YouTube channel, volume matters a lot, right? So what that means is to develop your taste in the things you want to do, right? So, you look at me or someone looks at you and they're like, wow, they check out our work and they're like, I want to be like this person. But I did not get here because I published 5 videos a year, right? I got here because I published, 200, 300 videos a year at some stage, right? So what that means is when I first started, it was just about volume, right? Like I was very curious about a lot of things, but I didn't also know what I kind of liked, what I didn't like, because I thought I liked every tech thing, right? So I covered every tech video, right? I covered every tech event, right? Contrast that with today where I rarely do events anymore. I never do events anymore. I release maybe sometimes on average right now, I'm doing averaging like 3 videos a month. So it's not a lot of videos anymore. Contrast that with even September, October, the month July. Yeah, so July, June, I released about 34 videos in June, right?
Wow.
Yeah, 34 videos in June. And then by last month, which was November, I only released 2 videos in November, right? So you can see like there's a huge variation between 34 videos and 2 videos, right? So I would say like it really depends. But for me at the stage I'm at, when I first started, it definitely was about volume, right? And there's still some months like June, for example, which was like when Samsung had like their big event. They had like 7 devices they released, and many of them were devices that for me, I do long form content and I believe in the long term. So when I get a device, I don't sell it or I don't, give it off, which many people are always asking me, what do you do with all the devices you get? I keep all of them. That's the answer to all of that. But because I keep all of them and I actually like keep track of them, I can make like retrospective videos. So I can make like comparisons with last year's model, comparisons with the model from 2 years ago. Because I know for many people, they're not buying a new phone or a new device every year, right? They're keeping their phones and they're holding it for 3, 4 years. And because again, I'm a long game guy, so I hold on to devices so that I can also make a video 4 years later. You get me? So because I've kept track of all of that, this year was a year where I was actually able to like, make those videos and do all of those things, right? So volume definitely it differs when you're at the later stage, but at the beginning stage, volume is not optional, right? Volume is the necessity. You have to do a lot, right? And there's been a lot of change from those early years where I was doing a lot, but then you develop your taste, or at least I did. I learned the kind of things I liked, the kind of things I didn't like. Events, for example, I'm great at events. I can do events. I can shoot like the really fancy event video with all the effects and everything. I just don't like it. During lockdown, I started experimenting with TikTok, right? Because I had not done short form content. So I posted every day to TikTok, I think from 2021 to 2022. At some stage for like 90 days nonstop, every single day I uploaded every single day to TikTok. I went from like 100 followers on TikTok to about 5,000, then 10,000, then 30,000, 50,000, 60,000, 62,000, 64,000 on TikTok, right? I went
Wow.
from that in within like a 6 month period, right?
Wow.
And
Just by posting daily.
yeah, just by posting daily, right? And it took me doing all of that to realize that I actually didn't like TikTok. So even though I have like 60 something thousand followers there, you rarely see me post anything about TikTok. Because again, I go where I like what I'm doing, right? Again, because we're talking about curiosity, we're talking about finding the things you like to do. And, again, if someone is wondering, like, oh, just because I have a numbers on a platform, will that mean that I will then, stop posting YouTube videos? No, the choice I made, which to many people did not make sense, especially because at that stage, my YouTube channel was barely at 20,000, right? Was like, you have like 60 something thousand on TikTok. Why just do that, right? Brands want to pay for that. It was at the height of when brands were paying like multiple figures for like TikTok videos. And I was like, yeah, no, but that's not what I want, right? So it took about 2 years of just going back to YouTube, posting for a whole year where I was only getting like 100 views because I'd taken like a 3 year break. Most brands not really responding to me for YouTube because they thought, hey, you have TikTok. Why are you doing YouTube? If you said you wanted to make a TikTok video, we'll give you the phone, but you're saying YouTube, bro, you are not there on YouTube, bro. So I did that for 2 years. And now, I turn down brands, right? So again, when you're starting out, volume is not optional. Volume is a necessity, right? But then the more you develop your taste, I think it goes against your taste if you keep doing volume without really finding out what you like and doing it. And it's a very difficult decision. I can tell you for me, it was difficult, especially because I knew the kind of deals I could have gotten. But even more important than that, I think for me, I believe it corrupts the soul, right? When you betray yourself in such a fundamental way. Like when you do something that you know that this is not me. But you're like, no, maybe I'm going to make money. Or no, maybe it's what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe it's what I should do because I have the numbers. Or like I believe it really corrupts the soul until at least I found so many creators who were in that kind of situation where eventually they just quit because they just couldn't take it anymore. It became lifeless. It became very, such a chore. The light in their eyes died. And then eventually, even though they were getting paid like so much, they stopped doing it. Right. And they've not done it ever since. And I've seen this cycle play out many times. I've been creating since 2007. Right. I've seen this with so many people in so many industries. I was a blogger. I saw many bloggers quit. I did radio. I saw many people quit. I've done YouTube now for 12 years. I've seen many people quit. So I think more importantly than that, you really have to be honest with yourself, whatever it is you want to do. That is this what I really want to do? And if it's not, that's okay too. And if you're not there yet, that's okay too. Like it's not, you don't have to put the pressure on yourself to make the thing you're doing, the only thing you're doing, right? Again, coming back to what I said about how, content to me is not the point, right? Content is a byproduct, because if content was the point, I would have quit many years ago, like not just taking a break, but like literally never making stuff again, right? So it then becomes important for you to find other things, right? For you to do other things, for you to still have a life, right? Which maybe runs counterintuitive to the whole hustle thing, which is why I don't believe in a hustle thing, right? I don't believe in like, oh, I have to, do high rocks and, do marathons and, because I get so many people ask me, right? Like, hey, you run every day. Why don't you sign up for this event? Why don't you sign up for that event? I've only done one event my entire life, even though I've been running for like 8 years, right? I've only done one event because I don't like events. I don't like that many people. For me, running is not a competitive thing. It's a thing that I do by myself just to have fun, just to connect with myself. Maybe at the end of the day or at the beginning of a day I like, and to run with my friends. So for me, it's deeply personal. And for many people, they really couldn't believe it because they're like, oh no, but you're fast. Your times are fast. Your times are good. If you did this, if you train, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I know, but that's not what I like. Right. So coming back to
Mm.
what you say, the days definitely are different. They're not the same. I don't have any 2 days that are the same. But what I think is constant throughout is always constantly, being very honest with myself about the day I'm having, not the day that I want to have, right? Because I could wake up and I'm be like, today I'm going to make this video and today I'm going to send this proposal, I'm going to do this, and then that's just not the day I have. That is given to me, man. So I have to very quickly, and if I don't accept it very quickly, it will take much longer. So it helps if I accept it very quickly that okay, today is not that day. What day is today? And then I find out what that day is, right? And then I just do whatever I can do.
Like Emmanuel, I like how you said I'm not gonna deal with the day I want to have, but I'm gonna deal with the day I already have.
Yeah.
It shows a lot how you're focusing on the now, you're focusing on the present tense. And that's where most of your tenses come from, especially during our nice conversation here. You're always speaking about today because that's what you have been given. You have no
Yeah.
idea what's going to happen tomorrow, and the
Yeah.
past has already been passed, right? Question though, a lot of people would come to a very remarkable age of 25, 30. Is the time where, especially from our cultures, it's a time where you need to know or you need to make sure that you have it figured out, quote unquote. You
Yeah.
need to make sure that you're on top of your game, you're specialized in your craft, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people today, with all the technological advancements, with everything coming up, with the globalization facing us today, everything has become way too distracting and people are losing purpose of, am I doing the right thing? Or better yet, I haven't yet figured out my passion. I
Yeah.
have a lot of reservations to this word, but I'm not going to get into that now. But I haven't found out my passion, so people could just relate to me.
Yeah.
Um, What would you tell these people? Because circling back to your story, a young boy from a village in Nigeria, right around 11 years old, and I'm gonna say it, and I could debate all night on that, gifted with the idea or that level of maturity to know what they want, or at least play with things that interest them
Yeah.
isn't the case with a lot of kids today. Isn't the case with a lot with most of the population today. You'd find people 25, 26, 28, 30,
Yeah.
35 even yet. They do not know what to do. They're just stuck with their 9 to 5 and they're just barely getting means to getting trying to make the ends meet.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line or how do you tell or where do you tell people, okay, now you need to stop searching or you need to continue searching. You shouldn't throw in the towel now. What are the parameters to these people?
I would say the parameters are still the same, mind blowingly, like shocking, right? I would say the parameters are still the same in that everything you feel is very valid, and everything you feel is telling you something that you are not listening to, right? So when you're hearing all these things about how where you should be, figuring things out and all of that, it's indirectly a way of telling of giving you a chance to step up into who you are, right? So when you're hearing that, oh, you're not where you are supposed to be, you're not who you're supposed to be, and all of these things, and it's like, sure, yeah, that's real. Like that's very real. That's a very real thing to feel, right? I think the counter to that is that this is also an opportunity for you to like take a step towards, hey, if you're not already where you're supposed to be, what do you have to lose then? Like, you get me?
Money.
Like, right. Okay, let's say
So
money,
what would
right?
you say? Yeah, yeah, money. Yeah,
So let's
my
say
job.
money, a job, right? It then becomes again about being present with yourself and being honest, right? And when you're being present with yourself and you're being honest, it means that you remove any kind of facade or any kind of pride that we tend to naturally build up when we're thinking of these things, right? Because when we're thinking of where we're supposed to be or who we're supposed to be, it's a very comparative thing, right? It's pegged against something else, right? And when it's pegged against something else, it's not rooted in reality, right? So if the reality that you have right now is that you don't have a job, or maybe the job you have is not paying well, or you need to find a job, your reality is different from you need to have your stuff sorted out. Or to be more crass, you need to have your shit sorted out. Like, you're not even at that stage yet. You're at the stage where you need to survive. You get me? Like, if you're taking the mentality of where you are, which is that, listen, you need to protect and provide for yourself. If you don't accept that reality, and instead the reality you're trying to accept is that, oh, I've not gotten my stuff sorted out compared to this or that or this, or at this stage or at this age I should have been making this, but look at me, I'm not. Like, the moment you enter into that mindset, it becomes even harder for you to get out of where you are right now, which is that you need to find something to make you survive first, right? And what you need to do to survive does not require any pride. It requires you to be very honest. Like, so I'll give my example. When I was in college, right? When I was in college, all the times you knew me, I was eating bread. Like, literally, I ate bread every day for 4 years. Like, I would eat bread for breakfast, I would eat bread for lunch, I would eat bread for dinner. Because that was the only thing I could afford, right? So I would buy bread 2 ringgit 30 from the Giant, and it's about 10 loaves or 11 loaves if I'm lucky, right? So I'd have 2 loaves or 3 loaves for breakfast. I would come back from college, I would walk, I'd have 3 loaves for lunch, and for dinner I would splurge and have 4 loaves for dinner, right? And that was it. That was what I ate every day for 4 years, right?
Wow,
And
four
it's like,
years. That's not an
well,
over exaggeration here.
yeah, it's not. I have all the tags. Yeah, 4 years. Yeah, right. So like at that moment, if I'm telling myself that, yeah, but all my mates in Nigeria, they've already been working for how long, or they already are married, they have kids. Like, if I kept telling myself that, I would even be in a worse situation. But guess what? I'm already in a bad situation, right? Like, if you think it cannot get any worse, it can, right? Which means that if it can get worse, it can also get better. And for it to get better, you need to survive. Because if you are not alive anymore, it becomes almost zero, if not zero, for anything to get better, right? So it becomes about surviving, and you have to embody that. Like, whatever it is you need to do to survive, it cannot be beneath you, right? You cannot be like, yeah, but that's not what is on my vision board, or that's not where I see myself. Yeah, guess what? That's not where you are right now, also, right? At that stage, I couldn't be like, oh, I'm going to turn down jobs, or I'm not going to work with brands, or that's not where I was, right? Like, now I can say that. At that stage, I couldn't say that. Right at that stage, on in campus, right? If there were events in campus, I would beg the student department to give me like a 2 hour job so I could, take photography for like 100 ringgit. For friends who wanted to take photos, I would convince them, pay me 50 ringgit, or in dollars is about $10. So I can take your photo. Anything I needed to do to survive, I did it. And there was nothing that was beneath me, right? At least legally, right? I did not do anything illegal, thankfully. But like, legally, anything, any and everything that I could do, I did, to be able to survive and keep me in the game long enough, right? Because if you are not in the game, if you're not alive, it's very difficult to win, right? Because winning is contingent on you being alive, right? So when you are in a ditch, like you said, when you're broke, when you're poor, when you're all of those things, you have to be honest with that. And maybe that's the battle you need to fight right now. Like, leave all of these philosophical things, leave all of this meaning, because you cannot find meaning on an empty stomach. Believe me, I've tried. You cannot, right? So leave all of this and fill your stomach first, right? And improve on your situation first, and then only you can move on from that, right? So, like I would
Mm.
say, it's about being present again, because it's a roundabout way. I keep saying that word all the time, but it's a roundabout way of always coming back into yourself. Sure, you have all these visions, and even I feel the frustration sometimes of the things I want to be doing, where I want to be, but all of it is all still rooted in not accepting where I am right now. And when I accept where I am right now, I've never failed in my life whenever I've accepted where I am, right? So it's like, let's say you rush to the door at a airport and they tell you, oh, we closed the gate. You're screaming at the person. You're screaming at the no, you must open the gate for me. I run here. Do you not see how I'm sweating? Do you know? They're like, yeah, but the plane is about to take off. But you scream some more, right? You're more incensed. You're like, you're thinking to yourself all the lost costs, you have to pay for the ticket again. You have to wait again. At this moment, your head is so hot, right? As we say in Nigeria, your head the hot, right? You scream even more, right? But at this stage, not only are they now not going to allow you to board the plane, now they will actively kick you away. Like they will actively not even want to help you at this stage, right? So it's very counterintuitive because you think, oh, you should scream more, oh, you should plead more. And maybe some people they do the opposite, right? They would cry, they would beg, they would scream, but they're like, sorry, miss, like we just cannot open the door for you. Like the airplane is taken out, it's already left. They're not going to bring it back, right? And I think for many people, it's like, yeah, but you're going to lose money. Guess what? You will lose money either way. And I think for me, it's always about like, you feel the pain because it is painful. You have no other choice. Again, being present means that I'm not pushing away the pain. I'm not telling you like, don't accept, or don't feel that, don't be angry or don't be incensed that this is happening. No, feel it because it is happening. But then, you also then realize, okay, I guess I'm staying 9 hours in the airport. So, are you going to stay 9 hours in the airport and said, yeah, if only that guy did not reverse and block the road 1 hour ago when I was on the way to the airport, I'll be here. Then you spend 9 hours thinking of that, right? And then
Mm.
you lost both ways, right? So it's like for many of these situations, again, it's always about, a very, when I say acceptance, it sounds very surface level, but it's really deep and it will test you of just being very radically honest about where you are at this moment, right? So for me, for example, it was when I wanted to get married, right? We did everything. It took us 2 years to get our papers because it was very difficult, only for us to do everything. And then we got a date. And then on our way back, they called us and told us that, sorry, we cannot marry people here because of a administrative problem, right? Do I go there and scream at them and tell them that, oh, they're not going to change their laws for me, even though I spent 2 years doing it, right? They're not going to change their laws for me, right? Even if I went there and I threatened them or whatever, which I didn't do, by the way, but even if I had done that, they would, in fact, if anything, in Malaysia, they would even, it's just cause for them to even, do more like negative stuff
Yeah.
to me, right? So, it's like, all right, I guess we're not getting married here then, so what other options do we have? What can we explore? Right. And I think it really helps a lot, especially when you are from a place like where we come from, where by by default, things are already stacked against you. Like you cannot be stacked against yourself because the world is already stacked against you. Like it then becomes about realizing that, okay, cry when you need to cry, be angry and be sad when you need to be angry and be sad because you need to feel all of those things. And then when you've let it out and when you've, been able to like get it out of your system, okay, then ask yourself the questions. Then it's a question. Then every opportunity is just a question like, okay, so how do I step up into this now? Okay, they did not do this. How do I step up into this now? Oh, we cannot do this for, all right. So what can you do for me? Okay, where can we go? Okay, what can we do, right? So even if we cannot do that, okay, am I going to be screaming at my partner that, oh, see, we didn't do this because this was late or that was late? This is the love of my life. I'm not going to do that, right? But if I were so stressed, if I was so tense at the other person, there's a high chance I'll be stressed at my partner as well. I'll be stressed at myself as well, right? It will transmit. And like what happens eventually if we don't even get married? Not because we couldn't get married, but because now she's going to leave me because I'm such a horrible person to be with because I'm just not enjoyable anymore, right? There are domino effects to all of these things. So it then becomes about feeling sad about it, feeling angry about it. And when that is past, just accepting that, all right, I'm broke, I'm poor. Okay, I'm broke, I'm poor. What can I do? I don't have a laptop. Okay, what do I have? Okay, my phone is not great. Okay, what can I do on my phone that is not great? Okay, so it's just, it's dividing it and dividing it and dividing it until you have something in the palm of your hand, and it might even be tiny that you have to like, put it under a microscope to be able to see it. But I have found a lot of power in just doing that, as opposed to, again, show not tell, right? It's just doing that, and that actually builds a lot of confidence because people see you and see what you've done with the little you have, and it gives them trust to give you more to do, right? So when I did the 100 ringgit jobs in college, then I got people who paid me more. Then, I got my department at one stage. Instead of paying for 4 subjects for that semester, they allowed me to make a video for them. So that was my subject fee. It was basically a video in exchange for 4 subjects that semester, right? So they were able to allow me to do that, right? Which nobody else could do, right? Because I was in the IT department. I'm not even in the media department, right? And yet my department allowed me to do that, right? Because they saw the stuff I'd been doing all along, right? They would have never allowed me to do that if I never had any proof to show them. If I was like, always talking about how I did not have anything and I don't do anything, and I'm just like, look at how poor I am, look at how broke I am. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for their situation. I definitely didn't blame myself for my situation. It's just, when you do things, and that's the way the world is structured on value, right? People pay for value. People don't pay for any of the things you might think they pay for. And if you're younger, maybe you think it's a degree, you think it's numbers, you think it's all of those things. It's not any of those things, right? What people pay for is value. It then becomes about how do you get in front of the people that value you? Because the harsh truth, if you're, again, listening right now, you're a younger person and you are in a place where people don't value you, it can be very difficult, especially on your mindset of like, wow, it's zero here, right? So for me, I think one of those things was realizing, number one, that I was in the wrong country. Like, no matter how good I was in Nigeria, no matter how things were in Nigeria, just the kind of people that were there, they're not bad people, right? It's just that they were just not people that were compatible with the kind of person that I want to be, right? And it's like, do I become this very, irritable person who is always talking bad about everybody around me? Or do I find a way to go to a place or another place where I have the chance of meeting the people like yourself who are more like my tempo, right? Like, so all of my effort then goes into going to a place where there are people who I am more like me, as opposed to the people that are not like me, right? So I think to wrap it up, to wrap up everything I've been saying, is when you are able to actually be present, you will be able to see that you have a lot more opportunities than you might have not, thought about.
Mhm. Mhm.
You good?
Wow, I'm good. I mean, to be very honest, that's a part I did not know about. Uh, and when I'm shocked, I usually remain silent just to
Yeah.
absorb and digest
Yeah.
what's been said.
Yeah.
By far, this could be one of the very few, if not the first episode I truly listened.
Yeah.
Um, you're quite eloquent in the way you narrate your story, and storytelling is probably by far one thing you master. Um, I personally I'm a public speaking coach and a corporate consultant, and I teach people storytelling. But for the very first time in a very long time, I've been taught storytelling today. Um, and that's based on that's and the beauty behind it, Emmanuel. Seriously, um, is the authenticity and the stories that you're sharing. I just believe I'm one of the luckiest people alive now that I get to be on a cast with you and bring out these stories to people. For God knows what, maybe one person listens to one sentence you're saying that could actually change their lives. And I'm going to segue from this point, and I really hope you still have some time for us.
Yes.
Emmanuel, I came across this LinkedIn post which put me into shambles. I
Yeah.
even commented on. I did not know that part in your life.
Yeah.
And the person, everyone that I'm talking to right now and whom you're listening to is a person speaking with so much energy, speaking with so much spark, and you can tell how lively he appreciates life and tries to make the most out of it. Had a very interesting episode by which they had planned to commit suicide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And by God's grace, good people have reached out
Yeah.
so that we could have this episode today.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that? How did this person come from that mentality to the mentality we're facing today?
Well, I think the thing I've discovered, and I've discovered this not by willingly, I would say, is the flip side of being someone who is very in tune with the things that I like, the things I don't like, the potential I have, the things I can do, the things I cannot do, is that perhaps more than the average person, it also weighs on me a lot more, right? So that means that by the time you've seen one YouTube video that I published, I've probably worked on 5 or 6 on average that I did not publish, right? And this
Okay.
is across everything that I do, right? By the time you see a post that I posted about my run, for example, I run every day. I did not post every day, right? Which means that and every day I take a photo, I take a video, I take multiple videos because I'm a huge guy who is into like archiving. So I'm always recording. I always have been, even since when I was a kid, when I could, I mean, not when I was a kid, I didn't have access to any of that, but the first opportunity I had to have like a camera or to have like something that could capture something, I capture everything, right? So that means that I have like this web in my head of how everything interconnects, right? So to many people, maybe they don't see how, running connects to my mental health. And maybe that recently people are able to know it, right? But initially, when I started running in like 2015, 2014, nobody like, cared in that particular way, right? But for me, I just knew that, whenever I would go out, I feel better. Whenever I would, even go for a walk, I feel much better as opposed to when I'm just cooped up in the house all day, right? So I think the flip side of all of that is that I'm definitely a lot more neurotic than most people, both positive and negative. So that means that the positive side is that I'm able to interconnect a lot of things. The negative side is much like I said about how by the time you had a podcast, by the time you've put out something, you've given a talk, there's so many invisible things you've had to do to get there, right? For you to, come on this podcast with me, you've had to do research, you've had to put together your notes, you've had to do so many things that is invisible, right? The only way it's visible is not even in a way that people see that. The only way it's visible is that it's invisible, right? It's
Mhm.
visible because you're a great host, but because you're a great host, it also doesn't show that you prepared anything.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
You get me, right? So it's there's this paradox of where the more you're good at being effortless or being uh, seamless, the more effort it actually takes for it to be like that, right? And I think
Mhm, mhm.
people don't realize that it's the same not just for companies, right? Like that's why Microsoft will have 50,000, 100,000 employees. Like, how do you have 100,000? I think it's even way more than that, right? I think I'm very, very conservative in my estimation, right? So companies that you're like, oh, how many people does it take? Even YouTube channels, right? Most big YouTube channels on average have like maybe 50 people working there, like 50 people for one YouTube channel. It seems excessive, right? But it's not, because it takes that amount of work to be able to actually just publish videos weekly, right? But the thing is, until you've been there in that hot seat where you're making videos week to week and you're dealing with sponsors, you're dealing with video ideas, you're dealing with different kinds of formats, shorts, long form, long-term video, short-term video, events, traveling for the event, making event videos, but coming back to your studio. These things take a lot of effort, right? And it's like the only way it's visible when you watch it as a viewer is that you're like, wow, this video is very nice. So you don't even see it. You never see it, right? A movie, for example, a Hollywood movie is another example I would give is you would see the budget. It took 200 million. And when you sit at the end of a Marvel movie, you see the credits, they last for like almost 7, 8 minutes. How many
Yes.
hundreds of I think probably thousands of people does it take to make one movie, right? It seems really excessive, right? But you watch the movie and you're like, wow, this is the best movie I'm actually going to watch till the end because I like the movie so much. I want to wait to see what little treats they gave me at the end, right? So there's many things like that the more you look into it, right? And I think for me as an individual, because I'm also someone who has a lot of volume, who puts out a lot of things. The downside of that is that when things are not going great, which is most of the time, actually, because what people see is just the end product. But for me, yeah, I'll tell you, when I'm working on a video, it really tests me, right? Because I'm someone which I'm obsessed with making things efficient. But then the way my brain is built, the moment it's efficient, I will never use it anymore. So I go on another hamster wheel to make another thing efficient. And then when it's efficient, I will never use it anymore. So I just have like what I call open loops. I have a lot of open loops, right? And when I was younger, and even now, the advice you always get is, you have to be consistent. Consistency beats genius. It's an advice you hear all the time, right? Consistency beats genius, right? Well, it's like, I only know about, let's say, Da Vinci, right? I only know of one of his painting. He was only consistent in one thing. Does that mean it was a failure because we only know one of his painting? You get what I mean?
I see
Right.
that. I see that.
Does that make him a failure because we only know one? Did he only paint one thing in his entire life? No, right?
Of course.
He
Yeah.
painted
Of course.
hundreds, if not thousands of paintings, right? Yet we only know one. Does that mean that he failed? Right. It's the same thing
Mm,
for a footballer, for example, right? Like, there are football strikers, which in football are people who score goals, who don't score a lot of goals, right? But let's say they score in a final and they're known for scoring in that final, like Maradona, the hand of God, where he scored in the final and he used his hand, right? So he scored so many goals in his career, but most people or most average people only know one. Does that mean that because they don't know all of his other stuff, like he was not a great person or he was not a great football player? Right. So you see what I'm trying to say, right? Is that for many things, there is kind of this shift that on the external thing, we kind of know it implicitly. We know that, okay, yeah, there are some certain products that are good for one certain things. They become synonymous with that product category, right? Like Band-Aid, right? Like Band-Aid. And there are some things that you use them every single day, you're never going to remember them, right? But on the flip side of it, as a creator, it's really difficult, or at least for me, as someone who makes things, right, it's really difficult because the way I'm seeing myself is mostly through the lens of misses way more than hits, right? Like there are way more misses than I've experienced than hits people will ever see, right? So people will maybe know me for this video, know me for that video, but for me, there are so many more things that I know I never did than the things I did. So at the stage of my life where I was when I was in college, at that time, not just internally, but externally as well, there were just so many things that I was very painfully, in fact, it was a non-stop ringing in my brain, in my head, where the only things I could see were the things that I was not doing well. Right. And
mm,
when people say, how do all this, very super famous actors, how do they commit suicide? How do these rich people commit suicide? And it's like, I get it. I'm not a super rich person. I'm not a super famous actor, but I get it. Like you can have the most successes, whatever it is on the outside, but there's nobody more intimate with your failures than you are. Right. So when you are someone who is very, very in tune with the things you make and you're very curious like I am, you also are able to tell yourself, maybe some people are way more blind to it, right? They have this opaque window in front of them where they cannot see through it, right? But I can. In fact, there's no window. I can see it as much as I'm seeing you right now. Like, yeah, sure, you made a nice video, but you could have done more. Yeah, sure, you did this, but this could have been better. Yeah, sure, this is not working, but you knew what you needed to do. You just didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? And I think at that stage, it was where it was the loudest it's ever been. It's been there throughout my life, I think. And I think even right now, the reason why it's not there anymore, to be completely transparent, is that I literally had to reconfigure my entire life to be supportive as opposed to be one where I need to prove myself, right? So that means that if I get a job, for example, and my boss, which I did, I had a job for a brief period of time where my manager told me, listen, Emmanuel, you have to, prove yourself here. You have to. I didn't. I lost that job, but I didn't. I didn't prove myself. So in fact, one of my core tenets that I've had to put as a non-negotiable is I never have to prove myself. Like the moment I'm in a situation where I'm put in that you have to prove yourself. You have to show us why we want to do this, is the moment I have now, I mean, this is very recent. I have now accepted that I will lose by default. Not because I'm not great at proving myself, not because I don't have whatever it is they're asking for, but because I know personally that when I'm in situations like that, it only amplifies the parts of myself that I know that I do not want amplified. Right. Because it's already difficult already in my own head with all the things that I know I'm not doing, all the things I know I'm not putting out. That's already difficult. Now imagine if that were the situation outside of my head as well. And that was what I was expected to do. And there's nothing you do that is good enough because this the standard is set and whatever, whatever. So for me, I think I talked about harsh truths. I think one of the harsh truths I had to accept was that I will never hold a traditional job because I have tried. I have held many jobs from regional uh, jobs to local jobs and everything, and the results have been the same each time, which is that it just amplifies the parts of myself that are not very healthy, right? And for me, I tried hard and I tried harder again and I tried even harder until I just had to accept that that's not me, my bro. Like I'm not that person. Like I'm someone, in the olden times, I would have been an explorer. I'm someone who went out to new lands and, you ask yourself, how do people find out the food that was healthy or good to eat and what was poisonous, right? I'm that kind of a person who would have tried those foods to tell you that it was healthy or not, right? Or this was
Right.
I'm that kind of a person, right? So I'm not built to be in a store managing all the inventory and seeing efficiency of 1%. That's not who I am. And I think it took me a long time to be able to accept that, hey, that's not who I am. I'm great at it. If I put my head to it, I'm really good at it because when I put my mind to anything, I can do it. But that's not who I am, right? When my TikTok blows up and suddenly I have like multiple of the followers I have on YouTube, that's not who I am. Let it go, right? So there are many situations like that. I'm dating someone, but there's something I don't like about them, or we're just not compatible on like a very basic level. Okay, that's not who I am. I'm moving on, right? So many situations, which is why I say like when I tell you right now that you get many opportunities, I'm not lying, right? Like even from the most simplest things, like you're eating food and you don't like the food, so why are you eating it, right? Or you're doing something, you're like sometimes my wife comes in and she's talking to me and I'm like, I don't want to listen right now. I'm very lucky to have the kind of wife I have because she doesn't take offense to that. She's like, all right, cool.
You
That's
are.
cool. I'll talk to you later. And likewise, because I cannot listen, man. Like for me in the mornings, for example, we call it booting, so I have to boot in the morning. I need like that 30 minutes to an hour. When I wake up, it's no noise, no sound, nothing. Don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't breathe at me, right? But my wife is the opposite, right? She's like, she wakes up and she wants to yap. Like she's Mac Yapper,
Yeah.
she has a podcast called Yap and Friends, right? Gonna yap your ears off, right? And I think for us at the beginning of our relationship, it was like a very difficult thing because I would, of course, try to listen to her, but I'm like, just a meltdown, right? So I think, again, that in many situations will have been a negative, right? Like, oh my God, we're not compatible. Oh my God, we're not. But it's an opportunity, right? It was an opportunity for us to get to know
Mhm.
each other at a very deep level of listen. I love you so much, my dear wife. I'm not that person, bro. Like, I'm not someone. So now it then becomes about, is this high stakes for you? Is this low stakes for you? Right. Which is why the language is very important, right? So for us, we're like, is it high stakes for you that I listen in the morning, or you actually don't care? You just want to talk to me if I want to listen to you. She's like, listen, I don't care. It's low stakes, actually. Like, when it's important, I will let you know. All right, cool. So it's low stakes always, right? Except when it's high stakes, like this morning, we needed to book like a trip. We're going to Johor and we need to book it like today. So it's high stakes. She talked to me. So she talked to me this morning, right? So, we can escalate it when we need, but it's not by default, right? And again, that's why I said it's important for you to know where you are, like, if that happened and I'm like, oh no, she's bad or I'm bad or we're just not, then it becomes this elephant in the room where we're like, yeah, no, you must listen to your wife, which I don't believe that, right? Like, I don't believe that, oh, your wife is always right. No, that's not what we do in our house. Like, in our house, both our feelings are important, right? And it's like, if there's anything that I'm not okay with or I'm not comfortable with, it's an opportunity for us to talk about it. It's an opportunity for us to understand, okay, where in that graph are we on? Like, okay, actually, is this high stakes for you? Is this low stakes for you? Do you care? Do you not care? Okay, how much do you care? Or and then when we have that conversation, suddenly the elephant is gone. Suddenly, this is not a
Mhm.
safari, right? And it's like
Right, right, right,
see how that happens, right? So it's like
right.
it's an opportunity. And I think coming back to your initial question, at that time it was really tough. And right now, the reason why I'm in the place I am is because I've also just, done it was really hard work to build a kind of supportive environment around me. My wife, for example, I don't have a partner where if I tell her like this night, she went out to movies with her friends, for example, right? And I'm like, I'm not going, right? Yesterday, she went out with movies with her friends. I'm not going. But for us, that means nothing because it's low stakes, right? It's not like, oh,
Okay.
you never go out with me. You never do anything with me. It's not because we have a date night. Every week we have a date night we've set aside. So every week, it doesn't matter what's happening. We come together. We have our date night. It might just be us at home. It might just be for a walk. It might be a movie. It doesn't matter. We spend that time every week. So every other day, it doesn't matter what we do, right? And even some days we have a date night, but I'm busy. I have a video. It's really important. It's a client thing. She's not going to be mad that, oh, but the other date night you did not come out with me because you were busy with your. No, we have that conversation because when you bring things to light, when you bring things into the present, and you acknowledge what the other person is feeling, you acknowledge what you are feeling, then you're able to really then ask yourself, okay, what do we do next? Okay, we couldn't meet last week. All right, how about we do Monday? Okay, how about we go to that place you wanted to go? Okay, how about we just sit at
Right.
home and talk to each other, right, and just connect again, right?
Right. Honestly, I love it. I mean, the amounts of unexpected marriage takeaways I took today from you are quite astounding. Let alone paired, let alone high, low stakes. I mean, I wrote those down, and I'm gonna really put them into action. And I'll catch you if I need any question. I'll ask you to coach me on.
Yes,
Um,
let's go.
Emmanuel, as a wrap up, higher the volume, the higher the chances slash the probability of you figuring out
Yeah,
what you were born to pursue.
yeah,
If we were to wrap things up into a very simple layman terms, higher volume, get the workout, put some more skin in the game.
yeah.
You have the time, but you also need to make sure you're utilizing it properly. Um, Emmanuel, I'm in your debt with this beautiful episode. Thank you for accepting to be
Hey, thank you
part
for
of this
putting me
new
on.
initiative.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And most importantly, I'd like to end with this question. If you were to recommend one person to have to sit down with me here, who would you recommend I would sit down with? Someone you might know.
Oh, it's gonna be
And I'll
really, really difficult because he's very busy with his kid right now. But there's this guy from Singapore, Visa Khan Virasamy. He's, when I've been in my head my entire life, and then I came online across this guy, and it's like as if he is in my brain. Literally, like every single thought I have, he's articulated it like to the nth dimension, like to the infinite dimensions. That's this guy Visa
oh,
Camp. Let me, I'll send you his stuff. Um,
please.
Gonna be very difficult to get him right now though, because he's a dad, the new dad. But
All
yeah,
right.
I guess you should have on is definitely Visa. Visa is like 100,000%.
That's a vouch, Mr. Visa. I'll hunt you down to the
Yes,
best of my ability.
yes,
And
for a
it's from
problem.
Emmanuel all the way.
Yes,
Awesome. Emmanuel, once again, thank you so much. I truly wish you the happiest life ever.
likewise, man.
You're a you're a very good person by heart, man. Keep that up and keep that spark up seriously because you inspire me personally. So
Hey,
thank you.
likewise, man. Likewise, likewise. But that's what
Thank
life
you.
is about, man. Life is about living it to the fullest of your capacity. And I think it's a waste to live a life that is not really yours, right? I think the greatest thing you can do for the world is to just live a good life. Because when you live a good life, everything and everyone around you benefit, you know?
Absolutely. It just pours over, right? It just pours
Yes.
over. The domino effect again, right? The domino
100%.
effect again.
Oh, that's right.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.